Eleanor sat in her favorite armchair, the one with the faded floral pattern that had cradled her through decades of life's highs and lows. At 78, her hands were weathered, her silver hair neatly pinned, but her eyes still sparkled with a fire that age couldn't dim. The living room was quiet, save for the ticking of the old mantel clock and the faint hum of the world outside her modest home. She sipped her tea, the warmth of the cup grounding her as she waited for the storm she knew was coming. Her daughter-in-law, Melissa, burst through the door, her face a mask of barely contained fury. At 32, Melissa was all sharp edges, blonde hair pulled tight in a bun, her designer blouse crisp, but her expression anything but. She clutched a stack of bills in one hand, her knuckles white. Eleanor didn't flinch. She'd seen tempers flare before, had weathered worse than this. But the air crackled with something new, something raw. "Eleanor, we need to talk," Melissa said, her voice tight, like a wire about to snap. She dropped the bills on the coffee table, where they fanned out like an accusation. "These are piling up. The utilities, the groceries, the mortgage, everything. And you're just sitting here, sipping tea, contributing nothing." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, setting her cup down with deliberate care. "Good afternoon to you too, Melissa," she said, her tone calm, but laced with an edge that made the younger woman pause. "What's got you so riled up today?" Melissa's eyes narrowed. "Don't play innocent. You've been living here for months, rent-free, eating our food, using our electricity. And what do? Nothing. You're a leech. Eleanor, get a job and stop being a burden." The word leech hung in the air, sharp and venomous. Eleanor's lips twitched, not in anger, but in something closer to amusement. A chuckle escaped her, soft at first, then louder, until it filled the room. Melissa's face reddened, her confusion palpable. "You think this is funny?" Melissa snapped, stepping closer. "We're drowning in debt, and you're laughing." Eleanor leaned back, her laughter fading into a knowing smile. "Oh, Melissa, you have no idea," she said, her voice steady but heavy with something unspoken. "You think I'm the burden. Sit down, dear. Let me tell you a story. A harsh truth, since you're so fond of throwing those around." Melissa hesitated, her anger faltering under the weight of Eleanor's gaze. She sank onto the couch, arms crossed, clearly expecting some feeble excuse. But Eleanor's eyes were distant now, lost in a memory that stretched back decades, to a time when she wasn't just a widow in her son's spare room, but a woman who carried the weight of a family on her shoulders. "I was 22 when I married George," Eleanor began, her voice soft but commanding. "He was charming, ambitious, but reckless with money. We had no savings, no safety net, just a tiny apartment and a baby on the way. Your husband, my Tommy, was that baby. And let me tell you, keeping us afloat wasn't easy." She paused, her fingers tracing the armrest as if it held the texture of those early years. "George worked odd jobs, but he'd spend half his paycheck at the bar. I was the one who made ends meet. I took in sewing at night, cleaned houses during the day, and when Tommy was born, I carried him on my hip while scrubbing floors. No one called me a leech then, Melissa. They called me a miracle." Melissa shifted uncomfortably, but Eleanor's story was just beginning. She spoke of the years that followed, how she'd saved every penny to buy their first home, a fixer-upper that became a haven. How she'd worked double shifts at a diner when George lost another job, her hands raw from washing dishes, her heart rawer from his broken promises. But she never let Tommy feel the strain. He had clothes, books, a chance at college. She'd clawed her way through life to give him that. And when George got sick, Eleanor continued, her voice dropping. I didn't stop. Cancer took him slow, and the bills piled up faster than I could pay. I sold my jewelry, my mother's heirlooms, even the car. I worked 3 jobs, Melissa, while nursing him at home. I didn't sleep for months. But Tommy, he got to finish school. He got to dream big. Because I made sure of it. Melissa's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Eleanor's words were a current, pulling her under, forcing her to listen. When George died, I was 45, with nothing but debt and a son who was starting his own life. I didn't ask for help. I rebuilt. I got a job at a library, then a better one at a community center, teaching crafts to kids, budgeting for seniors. I paid off every cent of that debt. And when Tommy met you, I was the one who gave him the down payment for this house. My savings. Melissa. My life's work. The room was silent now, the clocks ticking louder than ever. Melissa's eyes flickered to the bills on the table, her anger replaced by something uneasy, something like shame. Eleanor leaned forward, her gaze piercing. So when you call me a leech, you're not just lingerie blind. I've carried this family longer than you've been alive. And if you think I'm sitting here doing nothing, maybe you should ask yourself what you've done to understand the woman whose roof you're living under. Melissa opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she looked small, uncertain. Eleanor didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The truth was out, sharp and unyielding, and it was enough. The silence stretched, heavy and taut, as Melissa stared at the floor. Eleanor watched her, not with triumph, but with a quiet patience honed over years of weathering storms. The bills on the coffee table seemed to mock the tension, their numbers a stark reminder of the life Melissa thought she understood. But Eleanor wasn't done. Her story had more layers, more truths to unravel, and she intended to lay them bare. You think I'm living here out of laziness? Eleanor asked, her voice softer now, but no less firm. Let me take you back a bit further. Melissa, let's talk about what happened after Tommy left for college. Melissa looked up, her eyes wary but curious. Eleanor leaned back, her hands folded in her lap, and let the memories flood in. When Tommy moved out, I was alone for the first time in years. The house felt too big, too quiet. But I didn't crumble. I took a second job, saved every dime, and started volunteering at the community center. I taught knitting, budgeting, even basic cooking to folks who'd never learned. I wasn't just surviving, I was building something. A life, a purpose. She paused, her eyes drifting to the window where sunlight spilled across the room. I had friends, Melissa, a community, people who leaned on me, and I leaned on them. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. And when Tommy came back, talking about you, about marriage, about this house, I was thrilled. I wanted him to have what I never died a stable start. So I gave him everything I'd saved. $20,000. Every cent I'd scraped together. Melissa's eyes widened, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. I didn't know that. She mumbled. Of course you didn't. Eleanor said, not unkindly. Tommy didn't want you to feel burdened. He's like me that way, carrying the weight so others don't have to. But that money, it wasn't just cash. It was years of saying no to new dresses, to vacations, to anything that wasn't essential. It was my future, handed over so you too could have yours. Melissa shifted, her hands twisting in her lap. Eleanor could see the struggle in her eyes, the clash between resentment and the dawning realization of what Eleanor had sacrificed. But Eleanor wasn't looking for pity. She was building a bridge. one truth at a time. Then why are you here? Melissa asked, her voice quieter now, almost fragile. If you were so independent, why move in with us? Eleanor sighed, the weight of the question settling into her bones. 2 years ago, I fell. Broke my hip. The recovery was long. And the medical bills, they ate through what little I had left. Tommy insisted I move in. Said it was his turn to take care of me. I fought it. Melissa. I didn't want to be a burden. But he wouldn't hear it. And you nodded along. Said it was fine. So I came, thinking I could still contribute. Contribute. Melissa's tone sharpened again, though less certain. You haven't done anything since you got here. You just sit. Eleanor's smile was thin, almost wistful. You see what you want to see. Every morning, I'm up before you, washing dishes, folding laundry, tending the garden out back. Those vegetables you eat, I grow them. The curtains in your bedroom, I sewed them. The budget you and Tommy stick to, I helped him set it up. But you don't notice, because you've already decided I'm useless. Melissa flinched, her cheeks flushing. Eleanor didn't press the point. She let the words sink in, knowing they'd sting more in silence. Instead, she shifted the story forward, to the moment she'd decided to reclaim her place in the world. Last month, I started looking for work again, Eleanor said. Not because you call me a leech, but because I've never been one to sit idle. I applied to the library, the community center, even a little craft shop downtown. They're not jumping to hire a woman my age. But I'm not giving up. I've got a second interview tomorrow. In fact, Melissa's mouth opened, then closed again. She looked like a fish gasping for air, caught off guard by the revelation. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice low but steady. I'm not here to take from you, Melissa. I'm here because life doesn't always go as planned. But I've never stopped fighting. And I won't start now. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with unspoken apologies. Melissa's hands unclenched, her shoulders slumping as the fight drained out of her. Eleanor didn't need her to say sorry not yet. She knew change took time, and she'd planted the seed. For now, that was enough. The afternoon light shifted, casting long shadows across the living room. Eleanor's words lingered, a quiet challenge that Melissa couldn't shake. The younger woman stared at the coffee table, her fingers tracing the edge of a bill as if it held answers. Eleanor watched her, not pushing, just waiting. She'd learned long ago that truth needed space to breathe. Finally, Melissa spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know any of that, she said, her eyes still fixed on the table. Tommy never told me about the money. Or any of it. Eleanor nodded, her expression softening. He's a good man. My Tommy. Always has been. But he's not one for sharing burdens. He gets that from me, I suppose. Melissa looked up, her gaze conflicted. But why didn't you tell me? You've been here 6 months. And you never said a word about what you've done. Or what you're doing. Eleanor's smile was faint, tinged with sadness. Would you have listened? You made up your mind about me the day I moved in. I saw it in your eyes, pity. Maybe resentment. I didn't want to fight for your approval. I just wanted to help. In my own way. Melissa's face crumpled, a mix of guilt and frustration. I thought you were just taking advantage. Tommy works so hard, and I'm trying to keep everything together. The bills, the house, the kids, it's too much. And you seemed so comfortable. Comfortable. Eleanor chuckled, though there was no malice in it. Oh, Melissa, I've never been comfortable a day in my life. Every moment I'm here, I'm aware I'm in your space. That's why I do what I can quietly, so I don't step on toes. But maybe I should have been louder. She leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly. Let me tell you about the years after Tommy left home. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about finding meaning. I started a program at the community center, teaching seniors how to manage their money, how to stretch a dollar. I'd been doing it my whole life, so I figured I could pass it on. Those folks weren't just students, they became my family. When I broke my hip, they were the ones who brought me soup, who checked on me. I wasn't alone, because I'd built something real. Melissa's eyes softened, a crack in her defenses. Eleanor pressed on, her voice steady but warm. I didn't move in here to mooch, Melissa. I came because Tommy asked, and because I thought I could still make a difference. I've been paying for the groceries when I can, slipping money into Tommy's account. I thought you knew. I didn't, Melissa admitted, her voice breaking. I just saw the bills piling up and I got scared. I lashed out. Eleanor reached across the table, her hand hovering near Melissa's but not touching. Fear makes us see enemies where there aren't any. I've been there. When George was sick, I was terrified every day. But I learned something: you don't fight fear by pushing people away. You fight it by pulling them closer. Melissa's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded, a small gesture that felt like a truce. Eleanor leaned back, giving her space to process. The story wasn't over, and she had more to share, more truths to lay bare. When I was your age, Eleanor continued, I thought I had to do everything alone. I pushed away friends, family, anyone who offered help. I thought asking for it made me weak. But I was wrong. The strongest thing I ever did was let people in. Like when I started that program at the center. One of the women, Clara, was a widow like me. She was drowning in debt, about to lose her home. I helped her budget, taught her how to negotiate with the bank. She kept her house, Melissa, and she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. Melissa managed a small smile, the first since she'd stormed in. Eleanor took it as a sign to keep going. That's what I've always done, found ways to lift others up, even when I was barely standing myself. And I'm still doing it. The garden out back. It's not just for me. I've been teaching the neighbor kids how to grow their own food. Little steps, Melissa. They add up. The room felt lighter now, the tension easing like a knot slowly untying. Melissa looked at Eleanor, really looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time. I didn't know, she said again, softer this time. I should have asked. Eleanor nodded. We've got time to fix that. But you've got to meet me halfway. Melissa sat back, her hands still in her lap, her eyes searching Eleanor's face for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe understanding. The air between them was no longer charged with anger, but it wasn't peaceful either. It was a fragile middle ground, a place where truths could either mend or break. Eleanor felt the weight of it, but she wasn't afraid. She'd walked this line before. You're right, Melissa said at last, her voice low but steady. I didn't see you. Not really. I was so caught up in everything work. The kids. The money that I didn't even try to understand. Eleanor nodded, her expression gentle but unyielding. It's easy to get lost in your own storm. But you don't get to call someone a leech just because you're too busy to notice their hands pulling you up. Melissa flinched, but she didn't argue. Instead, she leaned forward, her elbows on her knees, and asked, what do we do now? I mean, how do we move forward? Eleanor's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. We start by talking. Really talking. Not shouting or assuming. And maybe you let me show you who I am, instead of deciding for me. Melissa nodded, a spark of determination in her eyes. Okay. Tell me more. About you. About everything. Eleanor took a deep breath, letting the request settle. She hadn't expected this. Not so soon. But she welcomed it. All right, she said. Let's go back to when I was rebuilding after George died. I was 45, alone, and the debt was a mountain I thought I'd never climb. But I did, one step at a time. I got a job at the library, shelving books, helping kids with their homework. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. And it led me to the community center, where I found my calling. She paused, her eyes bright with the memory. I started teaching classes budgeting, sewing, even gardening. I wasn't just helping people save money or grow food. I was giving them hope. Melissa. The kind of hope I'd clung to when things were darkest. There was this one man, Henry, who'd lost his job at 60. He thought he was done. That life had nothing left for him. I taught him how to budget, how to start a small business selling his wood carvings. He's still running it today, supporting his grandkids. Melissa's eyes widened, a mix of awe and shame. You did all that, while raising Tommy. And paying off debt, Eleanor added. It wasn't easy. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd ever get ahead. But I kept going. Not for me, but for Tommy, for the people I could help. That's what kept me alive. Melissa leaned back, her expression softening further. I had no idea. I don't know. I thought you were just old, retired, done. Eleanor laughed, a warm, rich sound that filled the room. Done. Oh, Melissa, I'm far from done. Even now, with this bad hip and a world that thinks I'm too old to matter, I'm still fighting. That job interview tomorrow. It's at the craft shop. They need someone to teach knitting classes. And I'm not just going to teach, I am going to make it a community. Like I always have. Melissa's lips parted, but no words came. She looked at Eleanor with something near respect, maybe even admiration. Eleanor didn't need it, but it felt good, like a crack of sunlight after a long storm. Let me tell you about the garden, Eleanor continued, her voice steady but warm. Those tomatoes and zucchini you love. I started that patch when I moved in. I didn't ask permission because I didn't want to fight. But every seed I planted was for this house. For you and Tommy and the kids. I've been teaching little Sarah next door how to tend it. She's only 8, but she's got a green thumb. Reminds me of myself at that age. Melissa's eyes glistened again, but she blinked it away. I noticed the garden, she admitted. I just didn't know it was you. I thought Tommy hired someone. Eleanor shook her head, her smile wry. No, just me. And I'm not stopping there. I've got plans. Melissa, I want to start a program here, in this neighborhood. Teach people how to grow their own food. Save money. Maybe even knit a scarf or two. I'm not here to take. I'm here to give. Melissa looked down, her fingers twisting together. I've been so wrong about you, she whispered. I'm sorry. Eleanor reached out this time, her hand resting lightly on Melissa's. We all make mistakes. What matters is what you do next. The room settled into a quieter rhythm, the kind that comes when walls start to crumble. Melissa's apology hung between them, fragile but sincere. Eleanor didn't rush to fill the silence. She'd learned that moments like these needed space to grow, like seeds in the garden she'd tended so carefully. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the walls with a golden glow that felt like a promise. Melissa shifted, her voice tentative. You said you have plans. For the neighborhood. What do you mean? Eleanor's eyes lit up, the spark of purpose reigniting. I've been watching this street, she said. The family's here. They're struggling, just like I did. Food's expensive. Jobs are scarce. And nobody's teaching them how to stretch what they've got. I want to start small workshops in the backyard. Maybe at the community center, if I can get the space. Teach people how to grow vegetables. Preserve them. Even sew their own clothes. Things that save money and build pride. Melissa tilted her head, curiosity replacing the last traces of her earlier anger. You think people would come? I mean, it's just, you're old. Eleanor finished, her tone playful but pointed. Age doesn't stop you unless you let it. I've seen 70-year-olds learn to can peaches and kids figure out how to plant carrots. People want to learn. Melissa. They just need someone to show them how. Melissa nodded slowly, her mind clearly turning. And you'd do all this for free. Eleanor shrugged. Not about money. Never was. It's about giving people a way to stand taller. When I was at my lowest, after George died, it was teaching others that pulled me through. Every time I helped someone, it reminded me I was still here, still worth something. Melissa's gaze dropped to her hands, her fingers still fidgeting. I've been so caught up in our problems, she said softly. I didn't see what you were doing, or who you are. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice warm but firm. You're not alone in that. Life's loud, Melissa. It drowns out the quiet things, the important ones. But you're seeing now. That's what matters. Melissa took a deep breath, as if steadying herself. Tell me more about your life. Before all this. Before us. Eleanor smiled, settling back into her chair. After Tommy went to college, I had to reinvent myself. The library job was my start. I loved the smell of old books, the kids whispering their dreams while I helped them with math. But the community center was where I found my heart. I started with one class, teaching widows how to budget after losing their husbands. It grew from there. Soon, I was running workshops on everything from gardening to knitting. I wasn't just teaching skills, I was teaching people how to keep going. She paused, her eyes distant. There was this one girl, Maria, barely 18. Her parents kicked her out, and she was living in a shelter. She came to my sewing class, shy, barely speaking. I taught her how to make her own clothes, how to budget for groceries. By the end, she was selling her own scarves at a local market, saving for an apartment. She sent me a card when she moved in, said I gave her a future. That card's still in my dresser. Melissa's eyes softened, a tear slipping free this time. You're like a superhero, she said, half laughing, half crying. I had no idea. No capes here, Eleanor said with a chuckle. Just stubbornness and a lot of coffee. But that's the thing. Melissa, everyone's got a story. You do, too. And I want to hear it. What's got you so scared that you're yelling at an old lady instead of talking to her? Melissa froze, caught off guard. She wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. It's everything. Tommy's working overtime, but it's not enough. The kids need new clothes. The car's breaking down, and I'm trying to keep up with my job and the house. I feel like I'm failing everyone. Eleanor nodded, her hand reaching out again, this time squeezing Melissa's gently. You're not failing. You're fighting. But you don't have to fight alone. I'm here, Melissa. Not as a leech, but as someone who's been in the trenches. Let me help. Melissa looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, Eleanor saw trust in her eyes. It was small, tentative, but it was there. Okay, Melissa whispered. Let's try? Eleanor smiled, the weight of the moment settling into something hopeful. Good. Now, let's start with that garden. Tomorrow, you and the kids can help me weed. It's a start. The next morning, the backyard was alive with the hum of possibility. Eleanor stood by the garden, her hands on her hips, surveying the rows of tomatoes and zucchini with a quiet pride. The sun was just climbing, casting a soft glow over the dew-kissed leaves. Melissa stepped outside. Her two kids, Lila, 10, and Ben, 7, trailing behind, their faces a mix of curiosity and reluctance. Morning, Eleanor called, her voice bright but firm. Ready to get your hands dirty? Lila wrinkled her nose, clutching her tablet. Do we have to? This is boring. Eleanor chuckled, crouching to Lila's level. Boring. These plants are like magic. You put a tiny seed in the ground, give it some love, and it gives you food. Want to see how it works? Lila hesitated, then nodded. Ben, more eager, was already poking at the dirt with a stick. Melissa watched, her expression a mix of uncertainty and hope. She'd agreed to this helping in the garden, starting small, but Eleanor could see the weight of yesterday's conversation still lingering in her eyes. All right, Eleanor said, handing out small trowels. We're weeding today. Pull the ones I point out, and be gentle with the roots. These plants are family, too. As they worked, Eleanor told stories, lighter ones this time, about her own childhood in a small town, where she'd learned to garden from her grandmother. She'd say, Eleanor, a garden's like life. You pull out the weeds, nurture the good stuff, and don't be afraid of a little dirt. Ben giggled, holding up a weed like a trophy. Is this a bad guy? Exactly, Eleanor said, winking. Get rid of the bad guys, and the good guys thrive. Melissa knelt beside them, pulling weeds with a focus that surprised Eleanor. You make it sound so simple, she said, glancing up. Life's not that easy. No, it's not, Eleanor agreed, her voice softening. But it's like this garden. You don't fix everything at once. You start small, one weed at a time. Before you know it, you've got something beautiful. They worked for an hour, the kids laughing as they competed to find the biggest weed, Melissa loosening up with every handful of dirt. Eleanor watched, her heart swelling. This was what she'd missed: connection, purpose, the simple act of building something together. Afterward, they sat on the porch with glasses of lemonade, the kids chattering about their victory over the weeds. Melissa looked at Eleanor, her expression softer than ever. This was nice, she said. I didn't expect it to feel so good. Eleanor smiled. That's what happens when you work together. Now, let me tell you about the time I started a garden at the community center. It was a mess at first. Nobody believed it would work. But we turned an empty lot into something that fed 20 families. Melissa listened as Eleanor recounted the story, how she'd rallied neighbors, scrounged for seeds, and fought the city for permission to use the land. It wasn't just about food, Eleanor said. It was about showing people they could make something out of nothing. That's what I want to do here, with you. Melissa's eyes brightened. You really think we could? Like, start something in the neighborhood? I know we can, Eleanor said, her voice steady. But it starts with us. You, me, Tommy, the kids. We're a team now, whether you like it or not. Melissa laughed, a real laugh, and Eleanor felt a shift, like the ground settling after a quake. They weren't fixed. Not yet. But they were moving forward. Later that day, Eleanor prepared for her interview at the craft shop. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple blouse and skirt, her hands steady despite the nerves. Melissa caught her in the hallway, hesitating before speaking. "Good luck today," she said. "I mean it." Eleanor nodded, her smile warm. "Thank you, Melissa. I'll be back to tell you how it went." The interview was a blur of hope and challenge. The shop owner, a kind woman named Ruth, was impressed by Eleanor's experience but cautious about her age. "You've got passion," Ruth said, "but teaching classes is demanding. Can you keep up?" Eleanor met her gaze, unflinching. "I've been keeping up my whole life. Give me a chance, and I'll show you." Ruth smiled, promising to call soon. Eleanor left with her head high, the possibility of a new chapter tingling in her veins. When she returned home, Melissa was waiting, her eyes eager for news. "Well?" Melissa asked. "They're thinking it over," Eleanor said. "But I'm not worried. I've got other plans, too." Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" Eleanor grinned. "You'll see. Tomorrow, we're starting on those workshops. You in?" Melissa hesitated, then nodded. "I'm in." The next week was a whirlwind of small, deliberate steps. Eleanor woke early each morning, her mind buzzing with ideas for the neighborhood workshops. She'd already started sketching planned simple sessions to teach gardening, budgeting, and basic sewing. Melissa, to her surprise, was all in, offering to help with flyers and spreading the word. The kids, Lila and Ben, were roped in too, their excitement infectious as they painted signs for the Backyard Learning Club, as Lila dubbed it. Eleanor stood in the backyard, watching Melissa staple a flyer to a wooden stake. The paper fluttered in the breeze, announcing their first workshop, Grow Your Own Food. The date was set for next Saturday, and Eleanor had already enlisted Sarah, the neighbor girl, to help demonstrate planting techniques. It felt like the old days at the community center, but closer, more personal. "You're really doing this," Melissa said, stepping back to admire the sign. "I mean, you're not just talking about it. You're making it happen." Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron, her smile wide. "Always have. Always will. But I'm not doing it alone this time. You're part of it now." Melissa blushed, a rare vulnerability in her expression. "I'm not sure I'm good at this kind of thing. I'm not, like you." "You don't have to be," Eleanor said, her voice firm but kind. "You just have to show up. The rest comes with time." As they worked, Eleanor shared more of her past, weaving stories into the rhythm of their tasks. "When I was running those classes at the community center," she said, "I had this one student, Frank. Big guy, used to be a mechanic, but he lost his shop in a bad deal. Came to my budgeting class out of desperation. He was so embarrassed. Thought he was too old to learn. I showed him how to track every penny, negotiate with creditors. A year later, he was back on his feet, teaching his own kids what I taught him." Melissa listened, her hands pausing on a stack of flyers. "You keep talking about helping people. It's like your whole life has been about that." Eleanor shrugged, her eyes on the garden. "It's what keeps me going. When you're down, lifting someone else up reminds you you're still strong." That evening, Tommy came home from work, his face tired but curious as he saw the signs and flyers scattered across the kitchen table. "What's all this?" he asked, loosening his tie. Melissa glanced at Eleanor, a small smile playing on her lips. "Your mom's starting a revolution in the backyard." Eleanor laughed, swatting at the air. "Hardly. Just trying to make things a little better around here. Tommy looked at his mother, then at Melissa, sensing the shift in their dynamic. You two seem different, he said cautiously. We're learning, Melissa said, her voice soft but sure. Your mom's been telling me things. About her life. About what she's done. I didn't know. Tommy's eyes softened as he looked at Eleanor. She's always been like that. Never stops. Never asks for credit. Eleanor waved him off. Embarrassed. Enough of that. We've got work to do. Tommy, you're helping with the workshop, too. We need muscle to move some tables. He grinned. The first real smile Eleanor had seen from him in weeks. Yes, ma'am. The days leading up to the workshop were a blur of preparation. Eleanor and Melissa knocked on neighbors' doors, inviting them to join. Some were skeptical, others curious, but a few like Sarah's parents and an older couple down the street signed up immediately. Eleanor felt the old fire in her chest, the thrill of building something from nothing. The night before the workshop, Eleanor got a call from Ruth at the craft shop. You've got the job, Ruth said. Start next week. Knitting classes. Twice a week. Think you can handle it? Eleanor's heart leapt. I can handle it. Thank you, Ruth. When she hung up, Melissa was watching from the doorway. Good news? She asked. I got the job, Eleanor said, her voice steady but her eyes bright. Knitting classes. It's a start. Melissa's face broke into a grin. That's amazing. We should celebrate. Eleanor shook her head, chuckling. No time for that. We've got a workshop to run. But maybe after, we'll have some cake. Melissa laughed, and for the first time, it felt like they were on the same side. Eleanor went to bed that night with a lightness she hadn't felt in months. The promise of new beginnings whispering in her dreams. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear. The backyard transformed into a small hub of activity. Eleanor had set up tables with seed packets, soil, and pots, while Melissa hung colorful banners the kids had made. Neighbors trickled in Sarah's parents, the older couple from down the street, and a few others, their faces a mix of curiosity and hope. Lila and Ben ran around, handing out lemonade, their earlier reluctance replaced by pride in their roles. Eleanor stood at the front, her silver hair catching the sunlight, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd lived every lesson she taught. Welcome, everyone, she said, her smile warm but purposeful. Today's about starting small, planting a seed, growing your own food. It's not just about saving money. It's about building something you can be proud of. The workshop was a success, messy and chaotic in the best way. Neighbors laughed as they fumbled with trowels, swapped stories about their own gardens, and asked Eleanor questions she answered with ease. Melissa worked alongside her, guiding a young couple through planting their first tomato seeds. Tommy hauled bags of soil, his grin wide as he watched his mother shine. As the group broke for lemonade, Sarah's mother, Karen, approached Eleanor. This is incredible, she said. We've been struggling with groceries. This could really help. Eleanor squeezed her hand. It will. And we're just getting started. Next week, we'll talk about preserving what you grow. Melissa overheard, her eyes meeting Eleanor's with a newfound respect. You're a natural, she said later, as they cleaned up. I've never seen people listen like that. They're not listening to me, Eleanor said. They're listening to possibility. I just point the way. That evening, the family sat around the kitchen table, a rare moment of togetherness. Tommy raised a glass of lemonade, his voice warm. To Mom, for reminding us what's possible. Eleanor blushed, waving him off. To all of us, she countered. We're in this together now. Melissa nodded, her voice quiet but sincere. I'm sorry, Eleanor, for what I said, for how I acted. You're not a leech. You're the heart of this family. Eleanor's eyes glistened, but she smiled. Apology accepted. Now, let's keep building. The weeks that followed were a blur of progress. Eleanor started her knitting classes, her students ranging from teens to retirees, all drawn to her warmth and wisdom. The backyard workshops grew, with more neighbors joining, their gardens sprouting alongside their confidence. Melissa took on a bigger role, organizing schedules and even teaching a budgeting class using Eleanor's old notes. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Melissa turned to Eleanor. You've changed everything, she said. Not just for us, but for everyone here. Eleanor chuckled, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I just planted a seed. Melissa, you're the one helping it grow. They sat in comfortable silence. The weight of the past lifted, replaced by a shared purpose. Eleanor thought back to Melissa's outburst, to the harsh words that had sparked this journey. She'd laughed then, not out of cruelty, but because she knew the truth was stronger than any insult. And now, that truth had built something Newa family. A community. A future. As the stars began to appear, Eleanor felt a quiet contentment. She'd spent her life fighting, giving, rebuilding. And here, in this moment, she saw it all come full circle. The garden was thriving. The neighborhood was waking up. And Melissa was no longer an adversary, but a partner. Tommy and the kids were happier, their laughter echoing through the house. And Eleanor, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Ready for tomorrow? Melissa asked, breaking the silence. Eleanor smiled, her eyes on the horizon. Always.